We're here. We're back at it. It is week 3 for us, week 4 for others, and I am Chris Drew from Innocent Sports. That's my guy, Ron James from Best Damn Media. We're here rocking out. Got another game preview this week. It's that time of year, right? I guess, again, we had like the weird little bye week, but we're back in action, but we weren't off last week. I mean, me and you weren't because we're always giving Ohio State content. What's good, man?
Man, we are back. It feels like the Buckeyes have not played a game in an eternity because the Buckeyes handled business so well in weeks 1 and 2, and then we have the early bye. It feels like we've been gone for so long, but the wait is over, and Buckeye football will be back this weekend, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, I'm happy about it. Can I just have complain about scheduling real briefly?
The yours.
How annoying is it that not only did we have a bye week, but Marshall also had a bye week? Why didn't we just play this game last week and then take the bye?
You're going to have to take that up with the scheduling gods. Clearly, plenty of people have had a lot to say about Ohio State's schedule, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I feel like some of the scheduling things that you're seeing with the Buckeyes have to do with what we'll get into later. So we'll revisit that later.
Yeah, we will. We will revisit it. Just real quick before we get into it, dog. I don't think that this is a major threat week. I don't have that kind of mindset, but I will say a lot of teams all over the country have gotten jump scared. Not all of them have lost. Some of them have. Notre Dame lost, but a lot of teams are getting jump scared. So while every team might not be a real threat or a real test, I think every week is a chance to slip up. And right now, Ohio State's one of like the 3 teams I think that have looked like the Death Star. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they go into this week. Do you feel the same? Where you at? How do you
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of people always say, oh, well, you guys didn't play anyone. I feel like one thing you can take away from some of these games is making sure that you don't play with your food and you're addressing some of your flaws. And I feel like you've been able to observe that with Ohio State. You see a team like Miami going out there and absolutely handling business. And I feel like that is the mark of a good team that goes out there and handles business, whether they're playing a top-ranked opponent or a MAC team. And you hope the Buckeyes are able to continue this trend of playing well, and they don't have any of the slip-ups that we've seen by the Notre Dames and the Penn States of the world.
Yeah, and while, Penn State was able to kind of avoid the full up, they still got the little jump scare. I do want to talk about a couple things, couple health notes just while we're here, because obviously coming off a bye week is a chance for guys to get healthy. Usually it's one bye week, and the one bye week is a lot later when you've got more injuries. Cody Simon obviously came back before the bye and played really well. We'll talk about him in a sec. Ryan, they told us that Donovan Jackson is ready to go and will be maybe not full tilt, but will be going on Saturday. How do you feel about that? Do you like that? Love that?
I love it because he gave further context in his press conference where he said that Donovan Jackson, they wanted to make sure that they got him a full week of practice reps before they put him back out there, and they were able to do this week. So the fact that they took a little bit extra time, and we talked about that the last time that we were on here, saying that, hey, take as much time as you need. Let these backups, a guy like Austin Cereveld, get the reps in the practice, because he, as you saw, he also announced that Tegra Shabola is the starting right guard. So we won't see a competition of Austin Cereveld going from starting at left guard to competing at right guard. So that's kind of something that you just have in your back pocket of knowing that you have a capable starter in Cereveld and the experience to carry into next year. So I'm glad that they took the time to give the younger guys an opportunity and learn from, rushing guys back in years past, when we had a scenario where
call us a natty, bro. Not just a scenario. Call us a natty.
Jackson Smith-Njigba put on a pitch count for his return, and they go, 10, 12 plays over the pitch count, and he ends up getting hurt in a meaningless game. And then you don't see him return for a potential national championship run. Who knows how the butterfly effect changes the outcome of that season if Jackson Smith-Njigba is removed from that game early or doesn't even get hurt in the first place.
Dude, is it messed up that I drafted JSN in all my fantasy leagues and Garrett Wilson, tried to get Marv in the ones I could. Is it messed up that when I saw Marv and JSN both going crazy week 2, I thought to myself, we really cost a natty because of one hamstring?
It's sickening that we missed out on seeing those two together and still were within a missed field goal of a national championship.
What duo would you rather seen together? Would you have rather seen Chase Young and a full year of Nick Bosa together, or a full year of JSN and Marv?
Can I go off the board? How about Chase Young and Parsons?
Oh, that's cheating.
If we're talking talking about Buckeye what ifs, I mean, in the last decade, that's my biggest what if. But if we have to stay within the realm of injury, I'm going Chase and Nick because you saw what Dwayne was able to do, broke Drew Brees' touchdown record in single season passing touchdown record with that team that had a lacking of a defense. So if we would have had Nick Bosa there healthy, it would have been interesting to see how much that was able to cover up the flaws of that defense.
Yeah, I do think that I struggle with that because like Nick and Chase would have been crazy, but I feel like JSN and Marv guaranteed us a natty. You know,
it does feel like a natty was missed there.
Yeah, it definitely does. Just real quick, so far, no real struggles with the Ohio State season. I mean, if we're so when we talk about difficulties, Ron, we have to really nitpick because obviously it's been 2 blowouts. Week 1, the one thing that I was bugged about was the slow start. Other than that, everything looked good.
And they come back out right and addressed it and continued a theme that we've seen from Ryan Day of deliberately addressing major flaws. And he said in his postgame press conference, we got to start better. Yeah. The next week you see them come out. Will Howard goes 10 for 10 on his first 10 passes.
Yeah, 10 for 10 and some downfield throws in there too. Like it wasn't all just like the Dylan Gabriel thing. It's not just like I'm going to beat you behind the line of scrimmage. Did you know that Dylan Gabriel so far they've played 3 games has 25 completions behind the line of scrimmage?
That's insane. That's almost a full game worth of completions.
Yeah, that's disgusting. So just want to throw that out there because I'm on my Oregon slander tour, just so in case anybody was wondering. Week 2, Western Michigan. I mean, I try to find one thing that we didn't do well, but we looked perfect.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was like, what do you want to see from Western Michigan? I'm like, fast start and stay healthy. They achieved both of those things. And like you mentioned, you see a lot of nitpicking going on. It's a long season, especially if they make the playoffs. And the Big Ten schedule is going to be absolutely no joke. So there's no need to rush and nitpick. As they actually start to show flaws, they'll come out on film and there will be plenty of time to criticize it. I feel like some people feel when they see these great performances that they have to speak in hyperbole just to have something to nitpick. But the Buckeyes have a long schedule and Big Ten play is right around the corner. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of teams that present different difficulties for this team that the Buckeyes will have to find ways to address this year. But so far, they've had a pretty clean start to the year.
Honestly, like when I approach games like this, I try to look for like what are things that I could see popping up later in the year with other teams. And last year we saw it a lot. Obviously, like when Kyle McCord would have these like really and Kyle McCord slow starts versus Will Howard slow starts are very different. Like Kyle McCord would take 2.5 quarters to get it going. It was real slow.
Yeah, it seems like Will has more of a streaky type of start where he'll give you 5 completions and then might go on a cold spell and get it going. Kyle, it just took a minute to start it, but it seems like he's put those issues behind him as well, having a couple of fast starts at Syracuse so far this season.
Yeah, because they're not messing around. They're like, we're just gonna throw this thing downfield. Like I almost said a bad word.
I'm just waiting for one of the guys on the beat to ask Ryan Day what type of bottle that Fran Brown sent him for giving him Kyle McCord.
No one on the beat has that much courage. You know that. You definitely know that. Does the early bye and coming out against a non-Power 5 team make you wonder if we'll get a slow start again, or do you think that out of Ohio State's system?
I feel like it would be the most Ohio State thing ever for them to kind of lapse back into the beginning of the season. It felt like that was almost a preseason, and now this is like the first official game of the year with that odd bye week in week 3, especially with the schedule change that we're going to get to here in a minute. But it made it feel like a much lighter schedule due to that change. And now it feels like the Buckeye season is really kicked off after that little delay. So if there is a little bit of a slow start, I'm willing to give them one more pass and see if they address it in week 1 of Big Ten play. But right now, given the early success that they've seen and then the early bye week, I feel like they could be off to a slow start again this week just because it feels like the season's kind of restarting right now.
It's a good point. And it's funny you called it the restart. It feels like to me they just played a preseason too. Got the week off like you're in the NFL, and now you're back in the regular season. Like,
and it speaks to Ohio State running an NFL type program. Like they preach all the time. We're getting guys ready for later in life, but also for the NFL, and a little bit of an NFL preseason for the Buckeyes this year.
A lot of people are bashing Ohio State and Ryan Day and Gene Smith and all the schedule gods for the scheduling mishaps. Why is it such a weak start to the year? Ohio State doesn't play anybody. There's a matchup that never was, that it wasn't supposed to be like this, but honestly, I will blame conference realignment because Ohio State was supposed to play at the time a Kalen DeBoer Washington team, and that game got canceled.
Yeah, you see Danny Cannell going off talking about Ohio State's strength of schedule. I believe it's currently 127. A lot of people conveniently ignore the fact that when Washington joined the Big Ten, the Ohio State home and home with Washington, at the time coached by Kalen DeBoer, was canceled. What? They're coming to the conference. What do we need this home and home for? They end up with Western Michigan on the schedule instead. And now you have a lot of national pundits giving a lot of lazy takes when it comes to Ohio State strength. So conveniently ignoring the fact that conference realignment is the reason when Ohio State has a history of scheduling a decently difficult non-conference. They're about to play Oregon, who they're trying to redeem a home and home that only ended up being one game due to the pandemic. But the last time the Buckeyes saw Oregon, they left a rubber duck on the block O in the middle of the shoe. They have Texas for a home and home in a year. I believe they have Alabama for a home and home in 2030. They and just had one with Notre Dame. The Buckeyes are consistently tough schedulers. So this lazy narrative that the Buckeyes are somehow ducking teams or have this cakewalk schedule on purpose and it wasn't due to the ever-changing landscape of college football, it completely out of their hands. I think it's unfair and lazy analysis.
No, it's so lazy because Ohio State has always wanted the smoke. Like Georgia canceled a home and home with Ohio State before too. I don't know if people know that. They have one rescheduled for way later. Obviously, the home and home with Bama when Nick Saban was there. That's when you made that. I mean, you made the one with Texas. You made the one with Notre Dame. You made the one with Oregon. Like constantly wanted the smoke. Always. The team that hasn't wanted the smoke and got away with getting out of their non-conference stuff before conference realignment was Michigan last year. And Michigan got rewarded by being able to moonwalk their way to a national title.
I know. And imagine how much more difficult the start to that season could have been if they would have been playing a difficult conference schedule, given that their head coach was suspended to start the season.
Exactly. And also, everybody's GOAT, Nick Saban, I think played one true out-of-conference road game his entire time at Bama, and it was against Texas at the very end.
Yeah, and they have Cupcake Week in the SEC that everyone just, oh man, that's so smart as a conference to have a break right at the end of the year.
Yeah,
but then it's a knock on Ohio State when they have a schedule that was out of their control.
Yeah, anybody that criticizes Ohio State for the scheduling stuff needs to do their homework, quit being lazy, and quit being a hater. All three are bad for you, especially at one time.
Absolutely. And I would imagine you're the athletic director getting a call in 2023. Hey, you want to play Ohio State week 2 of the season? I doubt there were many ranked teams just jumping on that opportunity to take a loss to Ohio State that looks like a Death Star team right now and say, yeah, sign up for that loss in week 2.
Yeah, literally no takers, dog. No takers. And I don't know. There's no takers. It's not beneficial. And additionally, with the extra game at the end of the year, because you're playing a 12-team playoff, Ron, it doesn't worry me at all. I'm good with it. I'm fine with it. I know that this is not the norm. This is not a pattern. This is them canceling a home and home because you cannot have home and homes with teams in your conference. That's not how it works.
It's not how it works. And it'll be interesting to see the takes next year about Ohio State's soft scheduling when they play Texas in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah. That's fair. Let's jump into what we actually got going on this team. Linebacker play, been a big topic of discussion. So far, we've seen Sonny, CJ, Arvell, Cody, and a little bit of Gabe Powers at the end of games. Do you want a rotation to continue with them, or do you want Jim Knowles to focus this week on finding the 2 or 3 that really work together and play?
When you first presented this question to me, I really started to think about a pairing that I liked. But the more and more I thought about it, I thought about the health of that position at Ohio State the past 2 years. And we have been banged up going into that game against the team up north at the linebacker position 2 years in a row now. So I would love to see this rotation continue and the depth to go as far as Gabe Powers still getting an opportunity, because I feel like the bigger rotation, the healthier this room has the opportunity to stay. And that's what I'm looking for most with this linebacker room. I think the pairing will sort itself out. And when those crunch time minutes, that's going to be the time to really pay attention. Like when they're talking about the Olympic basketball team, they always say, don't pay attention to the starters, pay attention to who's out there during the final minutes. So I would keep an eye on the rotation anytime the game is close or it feels like crunch time, especially as Big Ten play starts. I'm not as concerned about the pairing. I think that'll work itself out. And when the crunch time minutes come, you'll see that pairing. But I love the rotation, and I'd love to see it continue as long as these guys are performing and keeping this defense at its high caliber as it's been lately.
Yeah, I like the rotation as well. I think it's important for the health. And also, I think the other thing that people don't talk about enough is they refused to rotate last year. And I was the one that sat here right on this show and beat the table. Rotate, rotate, rotate. The last thing I want them to do this year is to pick a two and roll with them. Mix and match them. Play them a lot. Play the combos. Like, we don't like CJ Hicks out there with Sonny Styles. Maybe we like him with Cody Simon. Who knows? Like, we like Arvell Reese a lot out there. Well, let's see if we like him more with Sonny or like mix and match, because everything you do week to week is you're looking for the formula. What's the secret sauce? How can I make these the best ribs ever? How can I win this chili cook-off? And some things that maybe don't make sense, you taste them together and it makes sense. And but I really just want, like you said, fourth quarter, when it's time to go get a stop, when Jim Knowles needs to get a stop, and what two are going to be out there. And that's all I care about. And until then, play them all 20 snaps a game.
I mean, you started going off on your food analogies. I stopped listening to what you were saying and started thinking about dinner.
I'm hungry, dude.
I'm doing a show with Chris Vietti over here. Next thing you know, we're going to be off to Flavor Town.
Hey, let me make sure that I give credit to what is it, the B dog?
Little B, man.
Little B.
You got to give credit to Little B. You disrespect him like that one more time, you're gonna get a generational curse like Kevin Durant, man.
I know. That's what I'm. And James Harden. He never lifted James Harden. Just so you know.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not cashing in my favors with the base god to get you uncursed. So watch yourself.
Well, if I get cursed, that means Ohio State doesn't win. So whoa there.
Yeah, watch yourself.
Let me bring it back. I've been the most impressed with Arvell Reese in that linebacker room. I think it's so incredible that he's been able to look the part, feel the part, looks and feels like a Georgia linebacker. I've said it 20 times. I'll say it 100 more times. As long as my rotation consists a lot of him, when they said 30 whatever snaps weren't enough, I think it's a win for that unit.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the butterfly effect around Ohio State, and another one to think about is, I mean, if Mitchell Melton doesn't go down, and that's a guy that you see healthy at the jack position and are not as short on the edge, you have a guy maybe like Arvell Reese getting more reps at linebacker. They had him experimenting as an edge rusher as a true freshman, so he didn't get as many reps at linebacker. And a guy like Mitchell Melton, who is Jim Knowles' ideal jack, one of his favorite players on the defense, wasn't necessarily available for those reps, so kind of changed the look of the defense. Two guys that may have contributed in different roles last year given different circumstances.
With this many linebackers, were you surprised that Ryan Day was like absolutely not to the idea of having Hicks move down and be an end?
Yeah, it was kind of weird that he was so adamant that, like, we need CJ to be a linebacker, which makes it, I feel like it's more of a vote of confidence to CJ that, like, I don't care what they're saying on Twitter. I don't care what the couch coaches have to say. I like what we see out of CJ, and we still think that he is a capable linebacker, and that's where we need him. And I mean, especially in a room, like an edge room that isn't that it's deep as far as rotation, but as far as young depth, non-existent as far as the edge position. So for them to be so comfortable with CJ at linebacker and not interested in moving him to make that transition seems like a vote of confidence in CJ Hicks, the linebacker.
It was just that, like, everybody, including NFL personnel, graded him out as like the highest pass rusher and then the worst linebacker. And it's like, well, brother, hey, it's like the whole keep Kyle Pitts at tight end. Like, nah, he's a receiver, big dog.
It's like you have NFL scouts probably crossing their fingers, like, let them give me another Baron Browning playing him the wrong position, and then I'm going to get a steal on an elite edge rusher. Oh, you mean this 5-star you've been playing out of position? We'll take him in the 3rd or 4th round.
Say no more, Buster Brown.
Exactly.
I want to stay on defense. Ryan Day said he's looking for more defensive tackle depth. He said Hero and Caden McDonald are right there. But I thought I was surprised that he mentioned the depth, because I feel like of all the years since 2019, this is the hottest start for Larry Johnson's unit so far.
I feel like we have to do a little bit of deciphering the coach speak here, because I feel like some people may be misinterpreting what Ryan Day is saying here as far as wanting to see more depth at defensive tackle. Like you said, Larry Johnson has an amazing defensive line right now, and it's deep at defensive end and defensive tackle. But it felt like Ryan Day's challenge was to the guys behind the two deep, the Jason Moores of the world, the Taiwan Malones, because it felt like he was saying Caden and Hero Kanu are starting to solidify them. We need the next two guys to show us who's going to be in the two deep next year when Ty Leak and Ty Hamilton are out of here. And it felt like a challenge to the rest of those guys in the defensive tackle room, the Taiwan Malones, Jason Moore, Will Smith Jr., those guys of, hey, there's an opportunity here for you to make it into the two deep next year, and also push these guys that are starting to solidify themselves in the two deep and not let those guys get complacent as far as the rotations getting set on that defensive line.
That makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about that. It makes a lot of sense, Ron. That's why we like. That's why we keep you around, man. Defensive MVP. Who you got?
Jim Knowles. And Jimmy! I'm sticking with it. Jim Knowles, what he has done with this defense has been a miracle. What he has been able to transform this room, and like even some of the rooms that were depleted of talent as far as the cornerback depth at the time, the linebacker depth was uncertain. And you watched, Tommy Eichenberg's in the NFL now. Still Chambers floating around on rosters. And then we just talked about the linebacker depth in the room. Two of the biggest flaws in this defense when Jim Knowles took over this team. And you see both of those being positions of strength now. And the Buckeyes, you heard the stat during the Western Michigan game. They went almost a quarter and a half without giving up a first down. So to see this defense go from like, hey, shutouts are cool to like, out, no, we're not even letting them move the chains. So the step that this defense has taken in what historically has been the best year of Jim Knowles' defense, he has to win the defensive MVP, because I feel like this is his masterpiece finally coming together at Ohio State.
Yeah, I got something crazy for you. This is the best start by an Ohio State defense since 1963. 6 points through 2 games.
It's a long time. I was in high school back then.
Yeah. And that start, Ohio State shut out Texas A&M and Indiana to open up the year. This is their best start since then.
That's quite a long time. So it speaks to, the Buckeyes have had a few good teams since 1963.
Yeah.
So I'd say that speaks highly.
Too. Like, because there's been some really good teams. Like 2019, Ohio State was really, really good. Suffocating defensively. Best in the country. But 2 deep, 3 deep, not that great. So late in games, teams scored. This team, starters are elite. You and I have done the math. We think this second unit will be a top 15 defense in the country.
Absolutely. And I feel like that should scare teams that have the Buckeyes on their schedule next year, because while everyone's been talking about all the talent that is returned on that defense, this is a deep defense full of young talent. And while they're going to lose a lot from this defense, it's going to be a very talented defense again next year.
And they're going to get battle tested early with that Texas game, just for the record. My defensive MVP is Jack Sawyer. I think he's one of them ones, Ron. I think he's the one, man.
One thing about Jack Sawyer was the guy following the Bosa brothers, and then Chase Young, the next guy heralded as being that edge expert, that guy that is a game wrecker in the backfield. He came to Columbus with sky-high expectations, being a Columbus native. He absolutely wrecked the freshman spring game to the point where they had to tap him on the helmet and say, hey, not everybody came to see you get 100 sacks. Like, we have to complete a pass.
Yep.
And then it just felt like he never was given the opportunity to truly live up to the potential that he had placed on him coming in as a top 5 recruit in his recruiting class. He was asked to play out of position after putting on a bunch of weight to be a strong side defensive end. Then they asked him to play Jack after Mitchell Melton goes down. Just getting his body right and learning the position of defensive end. Even last year in his role, you didn't see as many wide splits. He wasn't asked to get after the passer as much last year. You saw the wider splits start to show up towards the end of the season last year, and there's a direct correlation in the success that he had at getting after the passer. And then again, week one doesn't get on the stat sheet, but is absolutely wrecking the game. If you watch it back on the film, you see how many quarterback hits and pressure that Jack Sawyer has, and then follows it up the next week and gets on the board with a sack. The level up that he's had, and I feel like his return to Columbus speaks to what he's doing on the field this year, because it felt like unfinished business, and he's ascending to another level and potentially living up to that hype. Do I think he's going to be Chase Young or Joey or Nick Bosa? No. But I do think he is going to be that pass rush expert that everyone expected in Columbus when they recruited him.
Dog, we're getting ultra instinct Jack Sawyer. He unlocked it on accident in the Missouri game because he had to, and he's here, and I think that he is going to challenge for, in an extended season, 13 sacks.
Yeah, we talked early in the season when we were previewing this year's team, and we talked about, do we think we have a double-digit sack defender on this team? I said absolutely not. But JTT comes out in week 1.5. Jack gets on the board in week 2. Like you said, with an extended season and with the way they've been getting after the passer, I think it's on the board.
Yeah. He's about to get double-digit sacks, and it's going to absolutely feed families. One flip to the offensive side of the ball, because we do have Marshall coming up. I do want to see 2 sacks from Jack Sawyer against Marshall. I saw Marshall's offensive line. They're not great. They're weak at the tackles. We saw VT really get after him. So I would like to see Jack get on board with 2 to help me get there. One thing we saw from Chase Young, food, like bad tackles were food against him. On offense, Will Howard hasn't got a ton of Heisman love so far, but he's looked and felt the part. On my rewatches, I'm like, well, why can't he be in New York? Do you think he can end up being in New York? Because guys like Cam Ward are getting a lot of buzz. Guys like Jackson Dart getting buzz. Shador, they're going to fall off crazy. I don't know if we'll see him in New York. But Will Howard, starting quarterback for Ohio State, is he New York bound? Maybe.
One of the biggest things in a Heisman campaign is the storyline. And my favorite Heisman storyline right now is Cam Ward and Will Howard. A lot has been made about Cam Ward's desire to transfer to Ohio State, but Ohio State not having much interest in the transfer quarterback. Now lighting it up with the highest Heisman odds at Miami. Will Howard, a guy not getting as much love, but doing everything asked of him in this Ohio State offense. We talked a little bit on last week's show about how the Ohio State hype was going to die down with the bye week because everyone forgets about you when you're not playing. You see, Ohio State doesn't play one game. They're falling in the rankings. People are criticizing their strength of schedule. You don't see a single Buckeye in the top 10 Heisman odds right now. Now that the Buckeyes are playing again and the bye week is behind them, they have Big Ten play about to start. I think if Will Howard continues to lead what looks to be a top 3 team, the number 1 team in the country, who knows? If he continues to lead this juggernaut, I think he's going to end up being in that Heisman conversation before the end of the year and could be battling with the same guy that he battled for his starting job with in the portal.
Better chance to end up in New York, Will Howard or Jeremiah Smith?
Will Howard, it is a quarterback's award. We've only seen one wide receiver in the last 2 decades win it, and Devontae Smith.
No. That's why I said make it to New York.
Make it to New York. Okay, make it to New York. Still, Will Howard. I think they're going to give it to Will. I think he is going to get a lot of credit, especially because I feel like this team is so well balanced and there's so many guys that you're going to get a lot of lazy voting, a lot of lazy takes, like in a scenario where you see Justin Fields and Chase Young both make it to New York, but not the 2,000-yard rusher and J.K. Dobbins. I feel like the quarterback's going to get the nod there.
I got Jeremiah going to New York because I don't know if Will's stats are going to line up with a lot of other guys, but Jeremiah justify the impact the same way Marv made to New York.
The one thing that concerns me about Jeremiah's campaign and hype this year is Ryan Williams. I feel like the fact that Ryan Williams is technically a year younger than him, that hype as true freshman wide receiver is kind of going to be neutralized a bit by another true freshman wide receiver.
But I don't think Ryan Williams is going to finish the year as the number 1 for them, though.
That could change things up. I think if Ryan Williams is able to finish on the current trajectory that he's on, it could neutralize some of the hype given another freshman going as bananas as Jeremiah Smith.
Yep, that's fair. A couple quick notes on Marshall. Ohio State's a 40-point favorite. I don't like touching those kind of lines ever. It's really frustrating. But you want to feel old? Chad Pennington's son is the third string quarterback over there at Marshall right now.
Yeah, man. A little bit of a legacy game here. Yeah. You have Chad Pennington and his son, the third string quarterback at Marshall, and they have Lorenzo Styles, former Buckeye, 2 sons on the team, former Super Bowl winner. A battle of the family legacies here, Chris. Who you got?
Right. Of course, they got Ohio State, but man, Marshall's got some cool alumni. Because what was it, Chad Pennington to Randy Moss?
To Randy Moss. I was looking up the pictures. I was looking for Chad Pennington in a Marshall uniform, and the first thing that pops up is him standing next to Randy Moss. Yeah. So, what a legacy to leave behind, and what shoes to fill for his son.
Yeah, big time shoes. We'll see how much we see him. I mean, we might see him because I don't think the game will be that close at all. But just one of those things that's like, holy smokes. For those who feel old. But of course, now we've seen like Marv Jr., we've seen Thaddeus Moss, we've seen, now the Styles, and now Pennington, Arch Manning,
Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, Raiola. I mean, we're here. Holy smokes, we're here.
It's crazy that we have officially arrived at the time when our superstars of our childhood are their sons are now the superstars of today.
Literally insane and almost a little bit disgusting to think about. But I'm excited for Ohio State. All I want to see, like you said last week or 2 weeks ago, fast start, no injuries. And I'm interested because I think Marshall's going to throw 2 or 3 trick plays at Ohio State because they've had 2 weeks to prep for them. I'm interested to see how Ohio State's secondary reacts to those.
That'll definitely be something to monitor. One of the biggest criticisms of Jim Knowles when arriving to Ohio State was him giving up the big plays. You saw that be the Achilles heel of that defense in his first year at Ohio State, especially in the loss to Michigan. But we appreciate everyone tuning in to us here on Bleacher Report and can't wait to be back on Saturday for an instant reaction after the Marshall game. A big shout out to everyone in the chat, our guy Cam, Emily, who's always showing support to us. So a big thank you to you guys. And Chris, you know how this ends. Go Bucks and OH.
I-O.